I'm going to be a little bit contrarian, Doug, because
Okay.
this is a battle that I have been
Okay.
fighting throughout my adult lifetime, starting
Okay.
when I was, I talked about being a campus or student activist when I was younger, but it continued when I was in college during the Vietnam era protests, and I was very anti-war. That began even when I was
Sure.
still in high school.
And by the way, on anti-war,
Right.
the difference
Yes.
between you and me of 5 years makes all the difference
Yeah,
in the
I think
world
that's right.
in the attitude toward the war,
Yeah.
where women were.
Yeah.
By the time I came along 5 years later,
Yeah.
even in a boys' high school, we had women teaching all
Yeah,
over the place,
yeah.
where we didn't 5 years prior.
Yeah, I think that's exactly
you were
right.
you were on the front end of a wave.
Yeah,
that,
you're exactly
that,
right.
that really happened pretty darn quickly.
Yes,
now,
it did.
I'm sorry to interrupt.
No,
but,
you're exactly right.
know,
and
and-
I won't
Yeah.
take us down that, but I
No.
can give you other examples that would illustrate that on certainly on women's issues, there was a crucial breaking point between 71 and 72. That's been documented
Yeah,
in
yeah.
many ways.
Yeah, yeah.
But
Yeah,
so
yeah,
I
yeah,
was
yeah,
I
yeah.
was strongly opposed to the war in Vietnam, and I spoke out against it even starting when I was in high school. I would do speeches and debates all over the Twin Cities and beyond. And my first political experience was campaigning for Eugene McCarthy, who was then a United States Senator from Minnesota, who was campaigning for the presidential nomination as an anti-war candidate, even before Bobby Kennedy started doing that. But I also, or I should say, I also defended freedom of speech for people who had different perspectives. And that was a very unpopular position on my campus at the time. Today, the students and faculty on the left end of the political spectrum call themselves progressives. In those days, they used the term radical. And in both contexts, the word liberal, which is how I've basically always described myself, has been looked down upon by those to the left that we're somehow wishy-washy and bourgeois. And I took a lot of heat from students in SDS, Students for a Democratic Society, and all kinds of organizations on the left who were definitely in the ascendancy on my campus, if not in numbers, in terms of influence and noise and impact, because I thought that they were wrong in what we would now call deplatforming speakers from the government, from the military, from the defense industry. I was standing up for freedom of speech, for views contrary to my own, and it was as unpopular then on campus as it is now. And in between, we had the advent of hate speech codes on campus. That was an idea that materialized in the early 80s and gathered a lot of steam into the early 90s. I was always opposed to that. I wrote law review articles about how they were unconstitutional. I did many debates. FIRE was founded originally as the Foundation for Individual Rights in Education in 1999. I immediately became a member of the Board of Advisors of
I
FIRE.
didn't realize he was that old.
Even though I was ACLU president, it was clear, and the ACLU had brought the first two cases challenging successfully the first two campus hate speech codes, but it was clear that they were proliferating around the country anyway. We couldn't handle all of that work, so it was wonderful that there was a new organization. I mean, it was terrible that it needed to be formed, but wonderful that it was there to provide the resources to take on these cases on a campus-by-campus basis. So to me, it's been more or less a steady fight